Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with this week's tech guests, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, you've heard me say many times, these are great companies. You should be using them at your school. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our Tech Tuesday guest, and then go and visit these sponsors because you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that demo today. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. And our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just love the tools that Huddle provided. Go to huddle.com, join the 100 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Scheduling, rosters, results, facilities. Home Campus does this better and faster than the other platforms, and their athletic eligibility and clearance platform alone is a game changer. Go to homecampus.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. We want to thank Beacon Creative and Wall of Fame for their support. Wall of Fame has been helping schools bring their legacy to life for years, but Beacon Creative takes it to a new level with their content creation service. They're going to take your data and come up with compelling stories and narratives that you can then post on your digital platforms. You got to see it to believe it. I want you to email John Townsend, and you can do that at John, John, at beaconwalloffame.com. Beacon Creative and Wall of Fame. It's a winning team. We also want to thank our good friends at Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and let their team help you become a social media marketing guru. Using their templates, their newsletters, your brands, your content, you're going to be like a professional digital media program. That's Gipper.com. It's so easy, even I can do it. Gipper.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to thank Hometown. Hometown continues to be a game changer with their suite of solutions that include things like, well, digital ticketing, of course, but how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction? The list just goes on and on. Whether you're an AD, a principal, even a head coach, Hometown's going to show you how to save time, how to raise more money, and how to bring your community together. You'll find it all at hometown.com. We want to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and while they were getting their degree, they also completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We want to say thanks to Booster Hub. Booster Hub is the #1 Booster Club software program, and it's the platform your boosters truly need to support your athletes. Things like sponsorship payments, meal fees, concession sales, it's all done through their secure system. How about online spirit, volunteer scheduling? All of this gives your boosters more time to support you as fans. And isn't that what you want? Go to boosterhub.com for more information. And let's say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes, your coaches, and your parents, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you really connect with all of your stakeholders. That's Athletic Surveys. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. We are going national today, and I'm talking National Federation of High Schools. Our guest today is Dana Pappas. She has an incredible background in athletics, but she is currently the Director of Officials Services for the National Federation. We're going to be talking about officials and a lot more, but Dana, I want to welcome you to the podcast. I also got to say congratulations on your induction into the New Mexico Activities Association Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here and exciting to represent the NFHS and talk a little bit about what we do. I think, working for an organization like us, people maybe see our logo on a rules book, but they don't really know who we are. So I'm always excited to kind of share our mission and what we do, and really talk about all the good things happening within the building here in Indianapolis, Indiana. So.
Oh no, absolutely. You and I were talking before the show, and I saw your blurb of being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Again, tremendous honor. But then I go, wow, a director of officiating, and I said we got to get her on the show. So we always like to start off by letting our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us your bio. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? I'm guessing New Mexico. What was the path that brought you to the National Federation of High Schools?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was there until I actually took the job in Indianapolis in 2021. So the road here was an interesting one. I graduated from a school called Highland High School in Albuquerque and went on to pursue a bachelor's degree at the University of New Mexico. Um, started, I graduated from UNM in 1997, and I actually consider myself the luckiest girl in the world because I was hired at the New Mexico Activities Association on July 1st of 97. So um, when you talk about, Bob Ross and happy accidents, I think my career has been one of those, and it's really been a pretty interesting story. So like we do when we get out of college, applied for 10,000 jobs, and you get to the point where you've kind of forgotten where all you've applied, and got a call on about June 29th of 1997 asking if I would come in for an interview. I interviewed on June 30th for the assistant to boys sports and officials, and got hired on the 30th and started on July 1st. And really didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest with you. I knew roughly what the NMAA was, what they did, but really didn't understand the depth and breadth of it. As a kid, I always knew I wanted to work in sports. My dream was to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously that didn't happen, although I think I could still do it. But I think that I always knew that I wanted to do something, but you aren't always presented with those opportunities. It's like in athletics, you could be a coach or you could be a player, and you don't know what else is out there as far as like athletic administration. So I started at the NMAA, and a couple of weeks after I started, we had our first officials clinic. And I didn't even really know what an officials clinic was at that time. And I'm working, and there's officials coming up to me asking me where their books are and where their membership cards are. And I'm like, I don't even know what those are. But what I realized very quickly was it was a group of people who needed advocacy and needed support and needed somebody to just care for them. And I kind of fell in love with that. It was something that there was that service element that I really felt connected to. So after working a couple of years, I went back and pursued my master's degree in sport administration and finished that a couple of years later. And in 2004, we had a change in administration at the NMAA, and a guy by the name of Gary Tripp came in as our executive director, and he promoted me to the commissioner of officials, was the job title at the time. And it was something that I don't know why he thought that I would be any good at it. I had worked with the officials for 7 years at that point, and he was like, "You're the person. You're going to lead this association." And I was under 30 years old. I was a female, and I had never officiated. So to me, it was like, man, that seems like three strikes. But Gary saw something in me that I don't think I saw in myself, and now it's been, since 2004. So it's been a long time that I've been working with officials since 97 for assistant to officials, and worked as the commissioner of officials from 2004 to 2021. And then the job at the NFHS for Director of Officiating Services became open, and I put my name in the hat and I was hired and have been here ever since. So it's been almost 30 years now of working in service to and for officials, and it's the dream job. I love officials. I love what they do. I love the service they provide. Um, you know, People just see the stripes sometimes, but when you see beyond those stripes and you understand the amazing human beings that are out there sacrificing their time to do something for people, for kids that aren't even theirs, They deserve so much recognition, and being able to just serve as a voice or an advocate or an ear for officials for my entire career has been an honor and a blessing. And it's something that I'm humbled by every day to be able to serve these individuals. So it's been an unconventional road probably to this position, but it's been something that it's been an incredible ride, and it's something that I'm just very, very honored to do.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing that journey. And again, I'm just fascinated by the stories that we get to hear on the podcast. But I want to go all the way back to, again, your origin story, growing up in New Mexico. Were you, suburban? Were you, inner city? Was it a driveway basketball hoop? What were some of your sport experiences growing up that kind of planted maybe the seeds to be involved as you are now?
Certainly. So the school that I went to, Highland, was what they called at the time just kind of like the melting pot of Albuquerque. So at the time, it was the most ethnically diverse school in all of New Mexico. And those rich cultural experiences I had from a very early age were super important to me in a formative way. I was able to see that not everybody looked like me or had the same demographics that I had. And we grew up in we were not affluent by any means. We were in a 900 square foot home, and I had my mom and dad and my sister, and my dad was kind of the dad of the neighborhood. But my love for sport really came from my father. He was a football player and track athlete in his day, and he didn't have a son, so I kind of became the son that he never had. And he raised me on football. When I was 5 years old, we were out in the backyard putting games in the dirt or plays in the dirt and teaching me how to throw a spiral. I'd have to put my Barbie down so I could go learn how to throw a spiral with dad. And we go play basketball down at the elementary school that I went to. There was a old, just beat up basketball court that we would go shoot hoops at. And my dad really instilled that love of sport in me, and it was difficult. I wanted to run track in high school, went to a pre-participation physical, and I had some very serious knee problems that kept me from being able to participate. So I ended up, I was in sports medicine, but I always stayed close to it because I loved it so much, even though I couldn't do what I wanted to and fulfill that athletic experience. I've just always stayed close to it. But I credit my dad for teaching me the game in the right way from the ground up. And then I've just fallen in love with other sports along the way. My husband's an avid hockey fan. So when we got together, being from the desert, I had to learn what this hockey was about and just became a student of the game. And I've really tried to do that professionally, personally. It's a huge part of who I am. And really, I always tell my dad, this is your fault because we're both like crazed fans. So I'm always like, Dad, you created this monster. So, but I'm grateful because I think that passion ended up serving me well as I became involved in interscholastic athletics.
Oh no, I love the story. I love the dad influence too. I've shared this story many times as a whiny junior high teenager. My brothers and I, we all got to work for my dad. He was a contractor, and I remember one day I was complaining about something on the job, and my dad said, Jake, the secret to happiness is finding something that you love to do, and then convincing somebody else to pay you to do that. And he found that in his job. He loved everything about it. I hated it. But I found that in coaching and teaching and then becoming an AD. Sounds like you did the same thing.
Absolutely. And it's so true. I learned everything about work ethic from my parents. My parents are so hardworking. I think in my dad's entire career, he never called in sick for work. So it's something that I got the love of sport from him, but I saw my parents just work so hard to support my sister and I. So I credit them for everything that I am right now because they were my foundation. We're still very, very close. My parents are 82 and 79, and they've just always been my biggest fans, my biggest support. So it's just they're a part of this journey as much or more than anybody else.
You mentioned earlier, graduating from college, back in the day. I'm a little bit older than you, but I remember sending out letters, real letters with stamps on
Yes.
them and making copies to all those jobs. And, you get those rejection letters sometimes. Most of the time you wouldn't even hear from them, but then you'd get that.
Very true.
We'd like you to come in for an interview. So you got asked to interview for the officiating supervisor's job at the state association. And you said later you'd never officiated a game in your life. I mean, what prompted you to, I guess, even apply for that? Although I can sometimes, hey, you're just going to apply for the job and see what happens.
I think it was a better lucky than good, to be honest with you. So the job was for the assistant to boys sports and officials. And I was like, okay, I love sports. I think that was kind of the allure, was loving sports. And then, worked my way up to the supervisory role after 7 years.
Yeah.
But I think about, we didn't have LinkedIn back in the day. There was no mass uploading your resume and having this pool of jobs. You had to look in the newspaper, and I feel like I'm 100 because I had to buy stamps and send them in the mail. So I think that allure was just being able to work with athletics. And when Gary Tripp came in and he promoted me, there were people who were concerned about, well, she's never officiated. And Gary was like, she's done, she knows this job. She knows the Constitution and bylaws. She knows this inside and out. Like, you don't have to have been a good official to administer officials. You had, like, my biggest blessing has been surrounding myself with people who know more about it than I do. I've got people who are experts in rules and mechanics. New Mexico had 10 sports. We have 17 at the NFHS. I couldn't possibly know the rules for all of those or the mechanics. I don't have that mental capacity. So being able to find those people and build your team and then trust them to do their job, that's so important. I don't have to be in the middle of everything. I have to find those people who I trust to train officials or evaluate officials, and support them. So I think people talk about my job, and the very core of it for me has been support, advocacy, fighting for them. There are 5,000 other people who know more about the X's and O's of officiating than I will ever know. 5,000 is probably a really low number, but um, I think my strength has been the ability to make connections and build relationships and find people, bring in resources, and make sure that officials have what they need. Because I think that sometimes officials are only thought of when they don't show up to a game. Then they become important when they aren't there. So making sure that officials are appreciated all of the time, making sure they're recognized, making sure they're supported, making sure you're getting the resources that you need. And I think that the fact that I didn't officiate ended up probably being my strongest quality, because I didn't have any of the biases for or against anyone. And I was looking at a different set of eyes as far as, okay, we have people who are experts for rules and mechanics, but what we don't have is somebody to fight the fight, somebody to be the ear, somebody to advocate for them and go to the board or go to the legislature or whoever it was in those moments that I needed to go fight for them. I had the ability to do that because I have a schedule of games that I had to worry about covering, because my life has been dedicated to fighting for them. So I think that what was probably seen as my biggest weakness might have been one of the biggest strengths. And Gary had the foresight to kind of understand that it could work, and I'm forever grateful to him for that.
And I'm glad you made that point. You're at the national office now, and you've got, and these are my words, not yours, so correct me if I misspeak. You kind of have that 30,000-foot view. As a career athletic director and coach, and I want to make this clear, who also officiated. I don't put myself as a professional official. I've done playoff basketball games, and I've worked national championship track meets. So I'm a pretty good official, but I was an AD who also officiated. You would hear both sides, from athletic directors and coaches. Oh, the official, they don't know the rules. They're lazy up and down the court. They're overpaid. We just gave them a raise 5 years ago or whatever it was. And from the officials, it's, we don't get support from the AD. We don't get cooperation from the coach. We haven't gotten a raise in 5 years. Those types of things. And I'm going somewhere with this point, so bear with me. I think from the national level, and certainly in cooperation with state associations, the focus is always on improved safety of the game, safety for kids, safety for coaches and officials, and also somewhere in there, continued emphasis on sportsmanship. Okay, so here's my question to you. Okay. Why do we still have such a problem with sportsmanship at the high school level? I don't remember 100 years ago when I was in high school, parents coming out of the bleachers, parents attacking coaches. I don't remember this stuff. There were technicals. Yeah, I remember one post game fight in basketball of all things. You know, what are we not doing wrong? I'm all for suspensions and penalties and banning and all that stuff. I'm a hang and judge type of guy. What do we need to do better?
So, gosh, it's so multifaceted. So this is something that we talk long and hard about here in our office. We have our bench bad behavior campaign, which actually was put together to be able to address sportsmanship and unsportsmanlike conduct of parents, fans, coaches, whoever it is that's acting inappropriately. And that was actually born out of a behavior summit that we had held several years ago, where we had entities from professional sports, collegiate sports, youth sports, high school sports, all got together and talked about, like, we know what the problems are, but what are some of the solutions? And I wish there were one, and I wish it was a magic pill, but it's not. So I think that, it's a lot of it is creating a culture within schools or communities as far as what's tolerated. I think that it's accountability and making sure that people are held to account for their behavior, and that includes officials. It's easy to say, oh, everybody's out of control, but if officials have a role in that, how they conduct themselves, their professionalism, the work that they're doing, that's part of the equation. So it's very easy for everybody to point fingers at everybody else and not really look within themselves. But I think that the education of everybody as far as their role in education-based athletics. So we have to remember, education-based, we're an extension of the classroom. This is about the development of lifelong learners and, developing those characteristics that we know that kids get through participation in high school activities and athletics. And I think that sometimes people lose sight of that. And high school is in such a precarious spot or interscholastic, because we've obviously middle school as well. So we're in that position where we're getting some trickle down from collegiate and pro. We're below us, we have youth sports that maybe don't have those same
Right.
set of values or boundaries as far as interscholastic education based. So it's how do we take fans, parents, students that are coming into interscholastic athletics and talk to them about the extension of the classroom and the mission of education-based athletics. And how do we also talk about how what you see maybe on television isn't appropriate for what's going on in a gym on Friday night or on a field on Friday night. And I think that, collaboration is critical in this area. And, NIAAA is part of your life. And that's an organization that we're working very, very closely with to be able to address athletic administrators about, here's some things you can do to help at your school. With regard to even hospitality for officials, because as better than I do, the turnover of ADs is really high. So if we're turning over 30% of athletic directors every year, sometimes they don't know what they don't know. So we're trying to do some really simple, if you have officials on your campus, make sure somebody greets them, have a place where they can get dressed that's not in the trunk of their car, preferably, have a bottle of water for them. So all of these things that I think we take for granted sometimes, or we're like, oh, that's common sense. Well, if you've never done it, you don't know. And also talking to officials about, okay, your role is, once you're officiating the game, you're taking care of what's going on in the field, the court, the pitch, the ice, whatever is in front of you. You can't be worried about the fan in row 8. So that's something for game side administration to deal with. Here's what your role is. So I hate to use the saying of you have to stay in your lane a little bit, but everybody has a lane that they need to be responsible for. But it only works if we're working together to address all of those lanes. So one of the things that we're doing a lot is just developing those relationships and cultivating them and making sure that they're strong with NIAAA, with NASO, the National Association for Sports Officials, working with the NCAA, working with NGBs, because we're sharing common pools of athletes, of officials, of coaches in some cases. So we've got to work together to really address those issues. And it's, there are some areas where we see some positive change, where I'm hearing from states like, hey, we're really seeing an improvement in this area. But then it always goes, but over here now it's increasing. And it's just like, well, why is it shifting from sport to sport? So it takes a lot of attention from everybody. If it's coaches, having preseason meetings with parents, getting officials to go talk at those preseason meetings. So you start developing those relationships and just reminding people of the human element of it. I think that, we're in a situation where you see professional and collegiate sport and everything's replay and review, and that same level is expected at high school. And that's just not where we are. So understanding officials are not perfect. But I've also never seen a coach coach a perfect game or a player play a perfect game. So we have to have some respect for, we had an official shortage. So a lot of officials are coming in and they're being put in situations that they just don't have a lot of hours behind them. Like they're doing the best they can, but they may not be prepared for something that's a big game management situation because it's experiential. So I think that, having some grace with one another, if it's a coach who maybe is just upset because his or her team isn't playing very well that night, understanding that as an official and understanding that as an official, when that game is over, the coach is dealing with a whole lot more than you are. They're getting calls from parents. They're making sure that their kids get picked up at the end of the day. They're, respecting each other's role and what we do is so critical. And I think it's easy to kind of get in our own little bubble where it's like, okay, this is my world, and not understand what the responsibilities are of everybody else. So we don't have to know how to do each other's job, but we have to respect the job that everybody else is doing. So like I said, I wish there was one solution, but I think it's just continuing to hammer home the importance of what we do in education-based athletics.
Right. Well, I hope you didn't feel like I was dumping that question on you, that we needed a definitive answer. But you did such a great job of talking about all the different facets to, and again, your expression, staying in your lane. Officials need to do their job. They need to know the rules. They need to
Yes.
make sure they arrive at the game on time and that they're professional. ADs need to be there, or their representative, to greet them. And again, these are things you learn over your career, but officials love to come to our school because we did all of those things. We took care of them, and we would make those sportsmanship announcements and then follow through if one of our parents or fans wasn't showing good sportsmanship. So we had that great relationship. So if something did go wrong, I already had the association president on speed dial. He had me on speed dial, and we could talk about, hey, this is what happened. So
Again, relationships, that's where all of this rests, is really the ability to have those. If it's AD to official, official to coach, those relationships, and those being positive relationships, and being able to talk through the rough spots. Having your state association, if there's a problem, have them kind of mediate something between you, because the end of the day is we all want a good game for the kids. We want it to be a positive experience for them. So how can we all, as the adults in the room, how can we make sure that it's positive? And we have to make sure we're checking egos at the door. This is not a place for that. Like, there's a lot of things that we need to do to make sure that kids have that opportunity to compete and learn those life lessons that we know that they do every time they put on their uniform.
Absolutely. And again, you want to start building that relationship locally with your local officials association. Yes. Make sure that your state association commissioners or directors who are in charge of sports or officials. And from a national level, Dana, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more. What's the best way that they can get a hold of you at the National Federation?
I love when officials reach out to me. That's probably been the hardest part of leaving a state association, is that contact all the time with officials and being able to go watch them work and do all the things I used to do. Email is generally the best way to get a hold of me, and I'm in email all the time, so it's probably the best connection. My email address is dpappas, it's DPAPPAS at nfhs.org. And if you have ideas, if you've got questions, anything, if you're interested in becoming an official, any of those things, feel free to reach out, and I'll make sure that we get you connected. Either if it's somebody in your state association that I need to connect you with, or if it's something I can help with personally, I'm more than happy to. Anytime I can help an official, it makes my day. So reach out at any time.
Well, Dana, thanks again for taking some time out of your busy day to share with our listeners. All the best as we move forward with 2026 and the rest of the sports. And once again, for listeners, you got a tremendous resource here. Dana is the Director of Officiating Services for the National Federation of High School. And oh, by the way, she's also getting inducted into the New Mexico Activities Association Hall of Fame for her many years of service to that association. Dana, thanks a lot, and we're going to have to get you back on.
Would love it. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope we can have a part 2 in the future.
For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you as well and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of every episode to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Tech Tuesday just about every week, and just about every day we try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Wow, Dana Pappas, National Federation of High Schools Officiating Services. Make sure you add her to your network. Also, make sure you add these sponsors to your network. These are all great companies. You should be using them if you're not already. Go ahead and check out Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Check out Huddle. As a football coach, we used Huddle. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Hometown, digital ticketing, website construction, fee-free fundraising. The list just goes on and on. Check out Hometown Ticketing. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Check out Ohio University. Athletic surveys by LifeTrack. If you're not using a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes and coaches and parents, you're really missing out. It's athleticsurveys.com. Booster Hub. It's the #1 booster club software. Check out boosterhub.com. Home campus, scheduling, rosters, results, athletic clearance. You need to have home campus on your team. That's homecampus.com. Gipper, go to gipper.com and let their team turn you into a social media marketing guru. That's gipper.com. Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Check them out. Wall of Fame digital platforms and Beacon Creative Content Service. Add them to your team. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.